2015 is approaching, and we all know about the circumstances right now. The world is facing the international financial crisis and some unexpected instability, especially in the Arab world. All of this is slowing the process that you have been all working on. What can we do to make faster progress in achieving the MDG goal in education?
I wish I know or I can answer this, but I guess we are here, gathered here today to discuss and to brainstorm and find ways and means to accelerate our progress towards education. But one of the ideas that I have is really to rethink our approach towards education and start to look at education as something that's not just affecting our lives in terms of educators, but also our lives in general. It's a macro problem. It's not just a micro problem. So we need really to tackle it in a more comprehensive way. One of the ways that really I think it might be valid to look at and examine, to see it as a business case. So we have to look at on a more business-like way. So we should set our business plan through defining our focus target. Then through this target, we have measurable outcomes and promote our case in a way as a business case. Then assess our outcomes according to certain KPI. So dividends are clear to everyone, among them business sectors, because I think the business sectors are the most affected sector by the outcomes of the education, and they are one of the end users. Actually, they are the main end users of any outcomes of this educational systems. So it's important for us really to revisit our approach, to rethink our way and methodologies toward education. It's important for us really to be more creative, more innovative in education. I believe in innovation education. I believe that education should be a dynamic sector. It should be always and flexible, adaptable, according to the needs and requirements of every time and every era.
So what we're doing basically today, we are doing our feasibility study for education.
If you want to put it this way, yes, it should be a feasibility study and should be examined according to certain KPIs.
And how do we choose a priority for this area?
Well, you are touching very sensitive issue here and very close to my heart. I know that the problems are really board, but one of the pressing problem when it comes to education and how can we meet the target of the MDG2 is really the conflict countries. Those children who are living in areas with conflicts or emerging from conflicts, they create or they constitute 2/3 of our target, the population target of the MDG2. So can you imagine if we can address this lost population, we'll be able to tackle and achieve 2/3 of our population. I think this is very important because it will lift them from the miseries and the poverty that they are living in. It will also build their nations and will insert the culture of peace and reconciliations. Those countries are at the most need of such culture to look forward and leave the past behind them. So it's important really to look to these categories of population as priorities for our target.
Thank you so much, Your Highness. Ms. Bellamy, my second question is for you. The reforms and new direction of the Fast Track Initiative, now Global Partnership for Education, provide more flexibility in terms of fundraising and management of funds. Can innovative mechanisms of financing make a real contribution in assisting developing countries to mobilize additional resources for development on a stable, predictable, and voluntary basis?
Well, I suppose the answer is yes, but my view is that there's more talk behind innovative financing and too little talk about financing for innovation. And I mean, there are groups that meet and they talk about debt swaps and private equity funds and they point to health and they say, well, look at all the innovative financing in health, but in fact, it hasn't been very innovative. It's been bonding and it's been taxes. But there needs to be more attention to financing for education. I mean, Senator Barkey's cash transfer, which has been around now for quite a while, and then there are many models, was a better utilization of existing financing that had an impact on getting children into school. And so I think more that's not to say we shouldn't be looking for various financing product, if you will. I'm not against that, but I think there's too much hope being put into this is going to fill the coffers, when in fact, in the long run, I mean, the majority of financing for education will always come from domestic governments. But financing for innovation, that's where we should be looking. So we should be taking not only the $2 billion that was referred to in the beginning, which I agree, and needs to be more than it is at present, and look how better to use it. I don't think it's only a question of more money. It's how you use the money and how you use it in ways that actually bring children into school. And Her Highness is right. I mean, if you're talking about out-of-school children, the great majority of out-of-school children are in conflict areas. And so again, because those systems are at this point very fragile, how you utilize the funding is really the approach that we need to be taking. That's what makes, in my view, this conference very important, because we're actually talking about innovation rather than send more money. If we had the innovation, we could use the money better.
So what I understand, Ms. Bellamy, there is no new ideas, maybe new concepts. Is this what you're trying to say?
Well, there are always new ideas, and I think there are new ideas in financing, and there's new partnerships.
Yes.
I mean, for too long, in my view, the education sector has been a bit allergic to engaging with the private sector, and now we're starting to see more private sector partnerships in education. I think that's very important. It's not only that. For much longer, the health sector has been prepared to. So there are new ideas. I'm not sure in the financing product, frankly, we've gone much further than taxes and bonding at this point, and maybe that's as far as we go, and that might work. I know Nick's working on a venture fund, but it's a venture fund. We all know about venture funds. It's a venture fund for innovation, and so my view is let's identify the innovation, and that can help us better utilize the funding.
Thank you, Ms. Bellamy. Senator Buarque, there's a very good success story in Brazil, and you personally contributed in the educational system in your country. Can you tell us more about what you did in Brazil to get good results in education?
Yes, thank you very much for being here. Hi, Highness, all others. We had a very successful effort in bringing children to school, but we did not have yet bring equality to school. What we did was to find a very obvious way to bring the children to school, to pay poor families, since they have all children in school. We started that theoretically in 1986. I was the rector of the University of Brazil at the time. When I was governor of Brasilia, it's a small state in Brazil, where is the capital, I started this program. 5 years, some years after that, President Zedillo of Mexico put this project in all Mexico, and very, very successful. I would like to say that President Zedillo's project was more successful than mine, even because he put together education, health, and nutrition and food. After that, President Cardoso put the project all over Brazil, and today, after President Lula, we have 12 million families receiving this allowance. This is very important for education, but it's very important for the economy also. It's a kind of social productive Keynesianism. Keynes recommend to pay to create a demand. We are creating a demand, but we are producing something special to the social project. What? The attendance of children. But we need a lot more. And in the short time I have, I'd like to say that we have to change our mind regarding education. Education has to be seen not as a problem to be solved by the governors, presidents. No, education has to be seen as the solution to our problem today. Even this global financial, economic, ecological, and social problem, education is the solution. And I think that if we have this commitment, it's time perhaps to do now for education what the world did after the Second World War for industry, for economy. Perhaps we need a kind of Marshall Doha plan for education in the world. We need some money to transfer from rich people. I'll not say rich country. There is no more that. In the rich country, we have a lot of poor people. In the poor people, we have a lot of rich persons. Let's make a transfer, and the benefit will be to everyone. Because through education, basic education, we will have innovation. There's no way to have wonderful universities without basic education. And there's no way to have bad universities if we have a good basic education to everyone. This is what we have to do. To put the local experience in a global scale and to say to the world, the solution to our civilizational crisis is a good education for everybody.
Thank you so much, Senator. Ms. Rita Roy, innovative financing for development has to be a global partnership. What is missing in the current situation in terms of mobilizing support from different sectors to fund education for all?
Oh, that could be a very sensitive question. And I think I have one answer, and the word is trust. We're talking here about innovation in terms of both financing mechanisms as well as ideas which are innovative. But I think sometimes we also miss the point of something which is very basic, that collaboration also takes innovation. And the fundamentals of collaboration require a level of trust, a level of understanding, and ensuring that the different parties, and I still see in so many places, public sector and private sector, sometimes even within the private sector, we are speaking different languages. It's not that we're not all believers. We believe in that education, number one, it's a lifetime investment. That there is a direct correlation between an investment in education and economic growth. And we've seen that in countries like Korea, in Singapore, etc. But I think that we miss the point when we try to bring parties together, that we understand not just targets, but outcomes. We understand accountability and a level of transparency. And I think sometimes there's a tremendous amount of hesitation in coming together and investing huge amounts of money when we're not sure of the accountability. And we have enough case studies, unfortunately too many case studies there, of money not well spent and not effectively spent. So I think that's one very, very critical piece. I do think that this work, particularly with working with young people and investing in education with the purpose of connecting them to the economy so that young people can be productive and can contribute to the economy, and they can also be agents of change, particularly when we work with very, very marginalized young people. We need to make sure that in our partnerships that we don't make mistakes of the past, and that we engage young people not only in the design, oftentimes the delivery, and absolutely in the evaluation of these programs. Too often donors play God, unfortunately, and we don't listen. And we don't take the time to understand what really works and what can be operationalized on the ground. So I leave you with that thought around trust, innovation within the confines of collaboration, and listening at the end of the day to the ultimate beneficiary who we intend to support.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. Now that we've heard from our four panelists, Mr. Burnett, what's your perspective on that?
Thank you very much. I think it's extremely important to reinforce the points about targeting and effectiveness that we've heard in different ways. Targeting in terms of where the need is internationally, so Her Highness has referred to countries in or emerging from conflict, or where the need is domestically, as Senator Boake has referred to the programs to improve the education of the poor, particularly in Brazil and in Mexico. And as Ms. Roy has mentioned with regard to youth and linking them up to the employment. But I do want to say just a word or two about the emerging ideas on innovative finance mechanisms, which I didn't mention at the beginning, because with all respect to Ms. Bellamy, I think she was just slightly too dismissive of these ideas. There are perhaps 4 major types of idea out there. One is to do, as she implied, with bonds. So, of course, bonds aren't anything new, except they haven't been used much in education. And there's a lot of thinking going on about how you could issue bonds to support education, both internationally and domestically. Now, the key thing with a bond, of course, is who repays it. And so mechanisms can be thought about, such as do exist in the health sector, whereby bonds are issued and the repayments come out of aid flows. That's what happens with IFIM, which is a mechanism for immunizations. But they wouldn't have to come out of aid flows. They could come out of any flows that people would be willing to guarantee, foundations, new donors, etc. Another important type of bond has to do with diaspora bonds. These only work, of course, for countries which have large diasporas, like India. The second main mechanism is sort of consumer contributions. So when you came here, you came on a plane. And if you came from Europe, you probably didn't realize it, but you paid a tax. And that tax actually went to support the Global Fund for AIDS, TB, and malaria. You probably didn't realize any of that. And there's an idea of an international tax, which was promoted particularly by the French government, and it's a great pleasure to see them here today, and which has now had major international traction. A third area has to do with impact investing, and there are a lot, or value investing as it's known in more in Europe, impact investing in the US, the idea of private investors who want to get a financial return, not necessarily a big one, but also a social return. And there's a lot of potential mileage in that. And the fourth thing has to do with not so much things specifically for education, but making sure that education gets its share of anything new internationally. So there's a lot of talk, particularly in the wake of all the financial crises, about some sort of financial transactions tax internationally. And indeed, France, Spain, and Brazil have all endorsed this idea. So if that were to happen, and if some of the proceeds were to go towards development, we need to ensure that education gets its fair share of the proceeds from such a tax. So here are some of the mechanisms which are currently under discussion. None of them, except for the bonds, will probably be, and the financial transaction tax, can realistically raise huge amounts of money, but they can all make a difference, and they can also all help raise that profile, which can then also feed back and help encourage more conventional aid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett.